Well, there are a number of things wrong with this deal that's been done. The backstop is the single most important one, because if you have a backstop from which you cannot leave, then that means that the negotiators on the other side don't have to do anything, because they know you'll be petrified about falling into it and you'll give everything at the end. So what he's doing at the moment is trying to find a way in which he can legally, and it has to be legally, ensure that the UK can leave any backstop should we not reach an agreement at the end of the next year and a half. And I wish him the best of luck on that. If he does come back with such a legally binding arrangement, then there's a very good chance that they'll get this deal through. But otherwise, I think there's not a lot of chance at all.
All right. How many do you believe in the ERG, the European Research Group, will vote against the deal no matter what the changes to the backstop are?
Well, I can't speak for others. All I can say is that it's not just little groups like this. When you think last time the Prime Minister lost the vote by over 220 votes, so there's a lot more people than just a group of people. It's a general sense that something fundamentally wrong with this agreement. Now, the EU has got to make its mind up, really. If it wants the deal to go ahead, then it has to be prepared to make those changes. But if it doesn't want the deal to go ahead, then if it sits tight, then that will happen. And I believe ultimately we will leave with no withdrawal agreement. That's not the same as saying we won't leave with the deal. There's always an arrangement, because all the things that we have to sort out will be sorted out. But what they want is they want 39 billion plus from the UK, but they won't be getting that if they don't make a move while Geoffrey Cox is there.
Iain Duncan Smith, what are you hearing from the people? I'm going to go back to 2005 of Chingford and Woodford Green, I believe it is. What are the people of Britain actually telling you as an arch-conservative?
Well, if you look at the polling, it's quite clear that the vast majority want to get out now, even if they voted Remain, just get on with it. And it's very difficult, you break it down, but all the polling tells us categorically, and the same in my constituency, which is that the majority are happy just to go out without a withdrawal agreement. That gets the highest scoring of the lot. And that's because what we've been seeing with the EU in the last few months is really not a very nice sight. It's a group of people that you would think would want to do a good arrangement with us and actually stay out as friends, but in fact spend their whole time slagging the UK off and deliberately making threats. Well, it doesn't seem to me that's a very good way to behave. And if they behave like that, what's happened in the UK, I think people have hardened up in their sense that this is not a very good organisation. So I think everyone's rather happy to be leaving. I
wrote last Friday, Iain Duncan Smith, on 1672, and the Dutch showed up in the River Thames, and it was terrible for Charles II. And then life went on. What happens 90 days out from Brexit? What happens 180 days out from Brexit? There's all the doom and gloom. Do you buy the doom and gloom?
No, I don't at all. I think that the problem is when you've been attached to an organisation as centrally controlling as this thing, the EU, then it's very difficult. People get persuaded that there is no life outside. But when you think that the UK, after 40 years, still does the majority of its trade outside the EU, not in the EU, which is unique to the UK, our growth markets are outside the EU. We actually have a surplus in trade with places like the United States and all these other countries around the world. We run a deficit, an enormous deficit in trade with the EU. So I think outside we will do incredibly well. It's like another reformation. It will be the same explosion of talent and opportunity.
Mr. Duncan Smith,
new reformation.
Yeah, right. Let me jump in here, because we all know your position regarding to the EU, but I'm trying to understand, if you had a choice, which seems to be the choice right now, between the risk of being trapped in the backstop or the uncertainty of being trapped in an extended EU membership, which one do you choose?
Well, I don't think that's the choice at all. I think the choice is very simply that unless this deal gets a change to the backstop, legally binding, then it's simply unacceptable to Parliament. And that means essentially, I believe, ultimately, that we will be leaving very much without a withdrawal agreement. I think that's where we're heading.
But how does the threat of an extension actually change your position on Theresa May's deal?
I don't think it changes anything, really, because I asked the question, why would the EU want an extension for 2 months? Because that's not going to change anything. And if we did have 2 months, one way or the other, doesn't change anything either way. The reality is they're just about to go to European elections. They've reallocated all the seats that the UK used to hold. If we went longer than that, it would be absolute chaos in Europe. And then if we left a year and a half later, they would then still have to remain as MEPs, members of the European Parliament, even if we'd left, because there's no legal precedent for them to stay out. So the European Union knows desperately it does not want us to stay longer than the extra 2 months. And I think that they're going to say, look, if we've got a deal and you need a few extra weeks to get the legislation through, that's fine. But just staying an extra 2 months for no particular purpose is all by those who want to remain and have never accepted it. They hope that there'll be a chance to have a longer extension of a year or two, and then they'll have a referendum. And I think that is the reality. So the answer is, I don't believe we're going to be extending. I think ultimately we will leave, and if necessary, we will leave without an agreement. That's a withdrawal agreement. We'll have an agreement very quickly, but we won't have a withdrawal agreement.